The modern world is a constant, cacophonous symphony of interruption. We live tethered to devices that promise connection but deliver fragmentation. This is the new human condition, a relentless, low-grade distraction that has eroded our ability to simply pay attention. We glance at screens an average of 85 times a day. Each glance is a tax on our cognitive resources. The sheer volume of incoming data is overwhelming the brain's finite processing capacity. We are not just struggling with willpower, we are facing a fundamental shift in how our minds interact with the environment. The deep, sustained focus that once defined mastery is now a rare, almost mystical skill. Why is it so hard to concentrate? The answer lies not just in our habits, but in the very design of our brains and the deliberate architecture of the digital world. The struggle to focus is not a personal failing, it is a systemic crisis. This is a story about the unseen forces that conspire against our minds. It is an investigation into the science of attention, tracing the line from ancient cognitive mechanisms to the hyperstimulating landscape of the 21st century. We will explore the neurotransmitters, the brain waves, and the evolutionary pressures that dictate what holds our gaze. We will uncover how technologies are specifically engineered to exploit our cognitive vulnerabilities, turning fleeting attention into a multi-billion-dollar commodity. The mystery is not what is distracting us, but how the mechanisms of distraction became so powerful. Our journey begins with the basic neurobiology of attention. This is where we understand the difference between bottom-up, involuntary attention, the siren song of a notification, and top-down, deliberate focus, the quiet commitment to a challenging task. We are caught in a cognitive crossfire, and the stakes are higher than mere productivity. They are about the quality of our thought, the depth of our relationships, and ultimately, the trajectory of human progress. We must understand the science of focus to reclaim our minds. To understand the crisis of concentration, we must first meet the main players in the theater of the mind. The prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, is the center of executive function. It handles planning, decision-making, and, crucially, top-down attentional control. This is the part of the brain that fights the urge to check an email mid-sentence. Its capacity, however, is severely limited. Think of it as a small spotlight that can only illuminate one thing at a time. Then there is the default mode network, DMN. The DMN is the brain's background operating system. It activates when we're not focused on a specific task. It's responsible for mind-wandering, self-reflection, and creative thought. While essential, an overactive DMN can be the enemy of concentration, constantly pulling the spotlight away from the task at hand. The balance between these two systems, the focused prefrontal cortex and the wandering DMN, is key to sustained attention. Another critical subject is the neurotransmitter dopamine. Often associated with pleasure, dopamine's primary role in this context is as a prediction error signal. It drives us toward things we expect to be rewarding. The unpredictable, variable reinforcement schedules of social media feeds and notifications, the maybe this time reward, flood the brain with dopamine, creating an addictive loop that prioritizes the novel and immediate over the important and delayed. This neurochemical reward system is being systematically gamed. The very structure of our information consumption habits is built upon this variable reward mechanism. Our attention is constantly being hijacked by the anticipation of a tiny, pleasurable burst of dopamine. Furthermore, we must introduce the concept of cognitive load. Every decision, every switch in attention, depletes this finite resource. The cumulative cognitive load of navigating a hyperconnected, always-on world leaves us perpetually fatigued. Our key subjects are not just brain structures and chemicals, they are also the insidious design principles of the attention economy that weaponize these biological truths against us. We must dissect this system to understand the true adversary. The core mystery is a paradox. We have more information and more sophisticated tools than any generation before us, yet we feel less capable of utilizing them effectively. We suffer from attention residue. When we switch from one task to another, a common occurrence in the modern office, a fragment of our mind remains tethered to the previous task. This residue diminishes performance on the new task. This is the silent killer of productivity and depth of thought. Studies show that even a brief interruption, like an instant message, can double the error rate in complex tasks. The initial problem, therefore, is not a lack of time, but a lack of unbroken time. We are living in a state of pseudo-work, where constant task switching creates the illusion of busyness without the substance of deep accomplishment. The average person switches tasks every 3 minutes. The brain never has a chance to enter a state of flow, the optimal psychological state where concentration is effortless and time seems to disappear. This continuous fragmentation is more than just inefficient, it is fundamentally altering our brain's circuitry. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, is a double-edged sword. By constantly practicing shallow attention, skimming, scanning, reacting, we are literally rewiring our brains to be more distractible. The brain is adapting to the environment we provide, and that environment is one of perpetual novelty and low-stakes interruption. The core mystery is, how do we break this cycle of adaptation and reclaim the neural pathways necessary for deep, meaningful focus? The answer requires digging into the evolutionary roots of our distractibility and understanding how modern technology has supercharged a primitive survival mechanism. We are perpetually scanning the horizon for danger, but now the danger is an email from our boss or a trending topic on a social feed. The first major clue in this investigation emerges from the study of sensory gating. Sensory gating is the neurological process by which the brain filters out redundant or irrelevant stimuli in the environment. It's the mechanism that allows you to have a conversation in a noisy room without being overwhelmed by every sound. A crucial discovery showed that in highly distractible individuals, this sensory gating process is less effective. Their brains are letting in more noise than others. This is a neurobiological difference, not just a matter of poor habits. It suggests that some people are predisposed to be more susceptible to distraction because their filter is leaky. For them, every fleeting thought, every peripheral sound, and every visual cue registers with higher intensity. This offers a powerful counterpoint to the moralizing view of distraction as pure laziness. Instead, it frames it as a difference in cognitive wiring. The attention system is composed of several networks, but the discovery of the Salience Network is particularly telling. The Salience Network is a system that identifies which incoming stimuli are important and should receive attention, acting as a kind of editor for the mind. When this network is hyper-responsive, it flags too many stimuli as important, leading to perpetual distraction. This network is heavily influenced by chronic stress and poor sleep, which are rampant in the hyperconnected world. Therefore, the simple act of being exhausted or stressed makes our brain's filtering system less effective. This crucial discovery points to a physiological explanation for the concentration crisis, moving the debate away from mere willpower and toward systemic self-care. It means that to improve focus, we must not only manage our external environment but also regulate our internal, neurochemical landscape. The modern epidemic of sleep deprivation is, in this light, an epidemic of weakened sensory gating. The brain cannot effectively filter the noise when it is fundamentally depleted. To fully grasp the current crisis, we must perform a deep dive into the evolutionary origin of our attention system. Our brains did not evolve for deep, sustained focus on abstract spreadsheets. They evolved for survival on the savanna. The bottom-up attention system, the reflex to an unexpected movement or sound, was a life-saving mechanism. If a rustle in the grass was ignored, it meant certain death by predator. The brain prioritizes novelty and sudden change because, historically, these were critical signals of danger or opportunity. This is the context for our current plight. Modern technology, and especially the design of the Internet and social platforms, is a perfect, optimized mirror of the savanna. The unexpected movement is a vibrating phone in your pocket. The rustle in the grass is a new email notification. These systems exploit our ancestral survival instinct. The notification is a promise of novelty, a guaranteed hit of the unexpected, which the primitive parts of our brain are compelled to investigate. Our cognitive resources, which should be directed toward long-term goals and complex problem-solving, the prefrontal cortex, are constantly being redirected to satisfy the primal urge to check for immediate, low-value information. The context is also one of technological warfare. Attention is the new oil, and companies hire neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to make their platforms as addictive as possible. They intentionally leverage the principles of operant conditioning, variable reinforcement, and social validation to ensure we keep coming back. The context of our lives is no longer neutral. It is a meticulously engineered environment designed to capture and hold our attention for profit. The origin of the problem is in the mismatch between a Stone Age brain and a Space Age environment. The tools we built have become the masters of our minds, weaponizing the very survival mechanisms that allowed our species to thrive. This deep dive reveals that the battle for focus is a battle against our own, perfectly natural, biology. The scientific community is split by conflicting theories regarding the attention crisis. One camp, the cognitive overload theorists, argues that the problem is purely environmental and a matter of information saturation. They claim the solution is digital detox, minimalist design, and setting strict boundaries. The brain is fundamentally fine, it's the sheer volume of stimuli that's the issue. The stakes here are largely personal, individual responsibility and habit formation are key. However, a counter-theory, the neuroplasticity alteration camp, presents a darker diagnosis. They argue that prolonged exposure to hyperstimulation is causing a physical, measurable change in the structure of the brain. They point to studies showing reduced gray matter density in regions associated with sustained attention and impulse control among heavy Internet users. Their argument is that we've gone beyond a habit problem into a long-term neurological transformation. The stakes here are societal. If true, the crisis affects collective intelligence and the future capacity for complex societal problem-solving. A third, less discussed theory is the cultural apathy hypothesis, which suggests that modern life has de-emphasized the value of deep work. Why focus for hours when an immediate, shallow output is often rewarded just as much? This theory shifts the blame from the brain to the economic and educational systems that fail to incentivize and reward true mastery. The escalating stakes are that if the neuroplasticity alteration camp is correct, then simply turning off the phone for an hour is insufficient. We need a fundamental, long-term rewiring process, a form of cognitive rehabilitation. If the cognitive overload theorists are correct, then the answer lies in collective technological regulation and design ethics. The debate is critical because the prescribed solution depends entirely on which theory holds sway. What began as a personal struggle with productivity has escalated into a debate about the future structure of the human mind and the ability of civilization to tackle existential challenges like climate change or pandemics, which require sustained, collaborative, and deep intellectual effort. We arrive at the point of no return when the external environment has so effectively reshaped our internal neurobiology that deliberate focus becomes a genuine struggle, not a momentary lapse. This point is defined by the phenomenon of learned inattention. After months or years of constantly task-switching and consuming fragmented information, the brain becomes structurally and functionally adapted to this mode. It actively resists the slower, deeper work required for concentration. Attempting to sit and read a book for an hour can induce a physical, almost panicked restlessness, a craving for the familiar jolt of novelty. The brain has been conditioned, like a lab rat, to seek out the variable reward of the notification. The point of no return is when the brain's baseline state shifts from quiet readiness to restless anticipation. Furthermore, the constant exposure to information has led to an overconfidence in our own memory and knowledge. This phenomenon, known as the Google effect or digital amnesia, means we rely on external databases, our phones, instead of internal processing. We no longer feel the cognitive friction that leads to true learning and retention because the information is always one search away. This outsourcing of memory and processing power to the network further weakens the neural architecture for deep thought. The brain realizes it does not need to hold on to information, leading to less effort being expended on encoding and retrieval. The final indicator of the point of no return is the collapse of downtime. Genuine rest, where the prefrontal cortex can recover and the DMN can engage in essential mind wandering, is now filled with the very same stimulus that causes the distraction in the first place. There is no off switch. The result is chronic cognitive fatigue, a state where our ability to initiate and maintain focus is permanently compromised until a profound intervention is made. The path back requires not just cutting down on screen time, but engaging in deliberate, effortful practice to rebuild the neglected neural pathways. New evidence from brain imaging and psychological studies continues to illustrate the profound impact of the attention crisis. The psychological impact manifests as low-grade anxiety and fear of missing out, FOMO, which are direct consequences of a hyperalert, distracted mind. The brain is constantly running an inventory of what it could be doing or missing, a state of perpetual vigilance that burns through mental energy. This is a form of learned helplessness where the individual feels they have lost control over their own attention. New evidence also highlights the switch cost in greater detail. Not only does task switching reduce performance, but the sheer anticipation of a switch, knowing a new email might arrive, is enough to deplete cognitive resources, even if the email never comes. The psychological toll is one of constant guilt and inadequacy. Individuals feel personally responsible for their inability to concentrate, viewing it as a character flaw rather than a biological and environmental mismatch. A critical piece of new evidence is the link between screen-based leisure time and reduced capacity for mind reading or empathy. Deep focus on text or interpersonal interactions builds the neural pathways for theory of mind, the ability to understand the thoughts and feelings of others. As attention becomes shallower, so too does our capacity for deep, nuanced human connection. The psychological impact is not just on personal productivity but on the fabric of social relationships. Furthermore, studies on younger generations who have never known a world without ubiquitous digital distractions show differences in memory encoding and problem-solving strategies, often favoring speed and breadth over depth and accuracy. The evidence points to a growing bifurcation in cognitive styles, a fast, fragmented mind optimized for searching, and a slow, deep mind optimized for synthesis. The psychological question is whether a society can function when the deep mind is increasingly marginalized. The truth about the attention crisis is actively suppressed, not by a single shadowy organization, but by the diffuse, pervasive economic incentives of the attention economy itself. The biggest attempts to suppress the truth come from the very platforms and devices that thrive on our distraction. They frame the problem as one of personal digital wellness or time management, effectively shifting the blame entirely onto the user. This framing suppresses the truth that the products themselves are the primary issue. They are not neutral tools, they are powerful psychological instruments. Their business model relies on maximizing time spent and engagement, and any admission that their product is fundamentally harmful to human cognition would undermine their valuation. The attempt at suppression is achieved through constant optimization of distraction. Sophisticated algorithms are developed to maximize the unpredictable, variable reward, the most addictive schedule of reinforcement known to behavioral science. Any attempts to implement controls are often superficial or easily bypassed. Furthermore, there is a systemic suppression of research that links heavy device use to negative neurological and psychological outcomes. Funding for independent, long-term studies is often limited, and the sheer pace of technological change makes it difficult for science to keep up. The media, which also relies on the attention economy, inadvertently suppresses the truth by favoring sensational, shallow headlines over deep, investigative analysis of the issue. The real truth being suppressed is this: the struggle to focus is not a bug in the system, it is its central feature. A focused, content, non-consuming mind is a threat to the attention-driven market. The quiet moments of contemplation, the space for deep reading and complex thought, are economically worthless to the system. Therefore, the system is designed to eliminate them. This suppression is not malicious in the sense of a conspiracy, but structural in the sense of a market force optimized for a single, destructive outcome. The pursuit of lost focus requires a confrontation with the forces that stole it. This confrontation is twofold: first, an internal reckoning with one's own neurochemical conditioning, and second, an external battle for technological sovereignty. The internal pursuit involves what is termed attentional training or metacognitive practice. Techniques like mindfulness meditation are not merely stress reduction tools, they are rigorous exercises designed to strengthen the prefrontal cortex and regulate the Salience Network. By repeatedly observing a wandering mind and gently bringing it back to a singular focus, like the breath, we are actively rewiring the brain away from learned inattention and toward top-down control. This is the pursuit of inner discipline in a chaotic world. The external confrontation involves directly engaging with the design of our tools. This is the act of customizing and restricting the device environment, turning off non-essential notifications, employing grayscale modes, and creating single-purpose environments for deep work. The confrontation with technology is a declaration of independence, a refusal to be treated as a passive consumer of algorithmic stimulation. This pursuit demands a radical re-evaluation of time. It involves scheduling deep work blocks that are treated as sacrosanct, non-negotiable appointments. It means confronting the social pressure to be instantly responsive. The final, and most difficult, confrontation is with the fear of boredom, the moment we consciously choose stillness over stimulation. This is where the battle for focus is won or lost. By enduring the initial discomfort of an understimulated mind, we allow the brain to transition from a reactive, attention deficit state to a proactive, attention-rich state. The pursuit is arduous, but the prize is intellectual freedom and a return to high-quality thought. The final pieces of the puzzle fall into place when we synthesize the neurobiology, the evolutionary context, and the psychological impact into a unified theory of the concentration crisis. The unified theory states that our inability to concentrate is the result of a triple mismatch, a mismatch between our motivation, long-term goals, and the mechanism, the dopamine-driven reward system, a mismatch between our mind, an ancient, sensory-gating brain, and the medium, a hyperstimulating, algorithmically optimized digital environment, and a mismatch between our movement, the need for slow, deep work, and the moment, the cultural expectation of speed and immediacy. This triple mismatch explains why sheer willpower fails. We are not weak, we are operating within a system that has been perfectly calibrated to exploit our fundamental biological wiring. The final piece is the realization that focus is not a unitary trait. It is a cluster of different skills: selective attention, filtering distractions, sustained attention, maintaining focus over time, and executive attention, switching and regulating focus. The digital age has weakened all three, but in different ways. By understanding the triple mismatch, we move beyond simple advice and toward a systems-level solution. The solution must involve 1. Neuroregulation, sleep, exercise, stress reduction, to strengthen the Salience Network and sensory gating. 2. Environmental redesign, digital boundaries, app restrictions, to counteract the medium's design. 3. Cultural reframing, re-emphasizing deep work, to resolve the motivation mismatch. Only by addressing the problem on all three levels can we hope to restore the brain's capacity for true focus. The truth, the primary conclusion of our investigation, is that the attention crisis is an engineered scarcity. Focus is not something we lost but something that has been systematically extracted from us. The human brain's capacity for sustained attention is an enormous resource, and the attention economy is a sophisticated, multi-trillion-dollar industry built on its continuous exploitation. The core mechanism of this extraction is the weaponization of novelty and social validation against the brain's primitive reward pathways. The dopamine system, which should incentivize long-term, goal-directed behavior, has been co-opted to favor immediate, low-effort consumption. We have been conditioned to prefer the easy pleasure of the scroll over the hard-won satisfaction of deep work. This truth has profound implications. It absolves the individual of the shame associated with distraction and reframes the problem as one of technological ethics and public health. Furthermore, the truth revealed is that attention is the foundation of all meaningful human endeavor. Every great scientific discovery, every masterpiece of art, and every compassionate act of governance requires deep, sustained concentration. By allowing our collective attention to be fragmented, we are not just impacting personal productivity, we are undermining the very capacity for collective brilliance and wisdom. The conclusion is a call to action. To reclaim focus is not a self-help trend, but a necessary act of cognitive resistance. It requires a societal shift to value the quiet, unmonetized space of contemplation above the loud, profitable chaos of constant connection. The scarcity is engineered, and therefore, the abundance of focus can be deliberately engineered in return. The aftermath of this truth must be a new movement focused on cognitive hygiene and attentional sovereignty. The legacy of the crisis will be the profound shift in how we design our tools and educate our children. Modern ties to this legacy are already forming. We see the rise of movements advocating for ethical design principles in technology, focusing on calm technology that respects the user's attention rather than exploits it. This is the legacy of pushing back against the default setting of digital life. In education, the legacy must be a renewed emphasis on teaching students how to focus through explicit instruction in metacognition, rather than merely punishing them for being distracted. If the most valuable skill in the 21st century is the ability to concentrate, then schools must prioritize the training of the prefrontal cortex over the memorization of facts that are instantly searchable. The aftermath also extends to the workplace, where the legacy will be the implementation of deep work zones, mandatory periods of non-interruption, and a culture that rewards the quality of output over the volume of visible activity. The modern ties are also deeply personal, manifesting in a renewed interest in ancient practices that inherently foster focus, such as craftsmanship, music, and nature immersion. These activities, which provide immediate, non-digital feedback and require sustained, non-variable effort, act as cognitive antidotes to the fragmented digital life. The key legacy will be the realization that true freedom in the modern age is not about having access to all information, it is about having control over one's own mind. The fight for focus is the fight for genuine intellectual freedom, ensuring that the legacy of humanity is one of thoughtful creation, not reactive consumption. The journey through the science of focus reveals that our concentration crisis is a complex, engineered phenomenon rooted in a triple mismatch between our evolutionary biology, the neurochemical reward system, and the profit-driven design of the digital environment. The struggle is not a moral failing but a systemic exploitation of the brain's natural mechanisms for survival, particularly the powerful draw of novelty and the variable reinforcement of dopamine. We identified the critical roles of the prefrontal cortex, the default mode network, and the Salience Network, and how they are compromised by constant interruption and cognitive overload. The key revelation, the midpoint twist, was that the deliberate cultivation of boredom is the necessary precursor to deep thought and creativity, allowing the brain's intrinsic functions to emerge. The confrontation requires both an internal commitment to attentional training and an external confrontation with the tools themselves, demanding ethical design and respect for our finite cognitive resources. The primary conclusion is that focus has become an engineered scarcity, and reclaiming it is an essential act of resistance for high-quality thinking and social well-being. However, a lingering mystery remains: can humanity collectively choose sustained, complex thought over easy, constant stimulation before the neurological changes become irreversible? The future trajectory of our species, our ability to solve global problems and create profound, lasting value, rests on the answer to this question. The science provides the map and the tools, but the journey back to deep focus is a profound personal and societal choice that we must make every single moment. The challenge is not just to understand the science, but to live by its profound and urgent truths.